Good evening and welcome to Edwardian Britain. Today we're in the kitchens of Downton Abbey. Okay, now the master has got a big dinner on tonight, but we're quite lucky because, well, we managed to get a couple of steaks. So we're going to treat ourselves tonight. We're going to have some stuffed steaks with mushrooms. Been out and got a load of mushrooms earlier. And we're going to serve them with roast chateau potatoes, some French recipe. Okay, so that's what we're on for tonight. Okay, so obviously we want some steak. We've got some steak here. We want some potatoes, and we want some mushrooms. Got a load of mushrooms here. Whoops! We need another beer, don't we? They're up there, they're in fancy pants drinking their champagne in a minute. We'll get the ale out, but we'll worry about that in a minute. So, you're going to want your mushrooms, you're going to want your potatoes, you want your steak. You want some forcemeat. I'll tell you what forcemeat is later. Some parsley, some butter. Okay, garlic, well that's optional. But garlic, salt, pepper, and some breadcrumbs. And that's all tonight is. Nice simple meal. Should only take about half hour. Well, cooking wise. Okay, you've got to do a little bit of prep. So, that's what you're going to need. You need to have a nice skillet. You need to put your oven on. Okay, put your oven on up to about 400 F. So about 200 on, isn't it? What happened there? The light went off. But anyway, so we're going to put the oven on. Okay. Oh, it's on. Yeah, didn't think it'd come on there. And we're going to get cooking. So, top up my ale. And then I'll show you what we've got to do first. So, start with, we want to get our potatoes ready because they're going to be the bit that take the longest. Okay. So we're going to peel our potatoes. So, I've got a bit more than enough for two here because by the time we trim and everything, you might find lose some. So, I'm going to peel my potatoes. And then I'm going to slice them. Okay, now traditionally these French, because they have to be bloody awkward, instead of just slicing it, you know, like we would do in England, just chop the buggers up. Bloody French would normally try and carve them into some of these oval shapes. We ain't going to bother fancying around like that. Might have to do it for him up there, but we're English, we're down here. We're going to cook it. So I'm going to peel these and then slice them. Okay, so you go off, get yourself a nice ale like I've just got. This one comes from Scotland. One of the guests brought some down with him. Not bad, not bad. Not as good as your English, obviously. So anyway, I'll get peeling and slicing and I'll come back to you. Okay, so we're about to cook in some butter. And knowing me, I should get bloody butter all over me. And this little plug here, this is my handmade Edwardian shirt from Some Like It Holy. There you go, little plug for Some Like It Holy. Okay, so I'm going to cover myself up with an apron because you know what I'm bloody like. So for this, you're going to want a skillet or something that you're going to put in the oven. All right, so we're going to start off our cooking our potatoes, which I've sliced up. I suppose they are really in ovals, just flat ovals. So for this we're going to want some butter, obviously. Okay, I've got unsalted because I use it for the baking, but you can have anything you like. Okay, and you want, I don't know, about 8 tablespoons of butter. So, I reckon like 1, 2, 3, 4, about that much, that'll do. Okay, so in that goes into our skillet, and then we're going to put that on heat. Now I'm going to keep the butter out because we're going to need that for our steak. So let's get some heat under that skillet. So we're going to melt down our butter, doing the right one this time. All right, if you remember the other week, I was sitting there, I told you, I was sitting there going, this bloody thing won't work. The wife said, because you got that one on, not this one. Anyway, so we're going to put that on there. And little sweet ale. So, and remember, don't touch your handles on this thing. Alright? Let me give you a bit of a view. Okay, a bit more. No, that'll do. So we're going to melt this down, and then we're going to chuck the potatoes in for about 5 minutes. Okay, to sort of fry them off a bit, as it were. Hopefully, sort of saute them a little bit. At the end of that, we're going to chuck in some garlic cloves. So I've already peeled some garlic cloves. Okay, we're not chopping them up. They're going in, and we'll be removing at the end. So peel them, all right? But we'll chuck them in after the 5 minutes, and then it'll go in the oven. And we will want regularly, within that 20 minutes, to be tossing the potatoes, all right? Crisp them off. At the end of that, we whip out the garlic, and then we're going to add some salt, some pepper, and some chopped parsley. Okay, and really want to serve it immediately. So once this has gone in the oven, we'll be starting on our steaks. Now, I said to you, steaks we're going to stuff with forcemeat. Now, forcemeat is really a little bit like minced meat. So, if you remember one of the previous episodes, we talked about making bratwurst sausages. Sausages really came about as a way of using up all the odd bits of meat, and because they didn't have any way of like refrigerating, they needed some way which we could, they could keep the meat sort of preserved. And so grinding it up and shoving it into sausage casings, and then obviously sort of like smoking them or whatever, meant that that meat didn't go to waste. Force meat is where it's ground that just a little bit more, so it's almost like a paste. Now my grinder can't get it quite, well, the handle's starting to get warm now, I'll have to watch my hands. But you can see the butter starting to melt. I'll better get a cloth because I'll burn myself. So like I say, so the idea is grind it that little bit more. So, and this is pork. Now force meat comes in a variety of flavours, if you like. I've just used some pork, some lean pork chops. Okay, wants to be quite fatty, although these were the lean ones again. Okay, and essentially grind up your pork or your beef, or pork and beef, or chicken, even venison, whatever. Grind that up. So that's gone through a couple of times to try and get it a little bit finer. Okay, and that will be stuffed inside the steak. You'll see how we do that once we get them potatoes in the oven. So you can hear that's just coming up. So I'm going to tip them in there, okay, and we'll give them a little bit of a turn over, so all the potatoes are nicely coated in the butter. And like I say, that one don't want to separate. Come here, you little bugger. And that one don't want to separate. This is where I get splashed. Right, that's why I've got my apron on. So this get in there. Oh, so I'll have to do that one with my knife. Where is it? These, like I say, about 5 minutes. Okay. So might as well pause there. Give them a little bit of time to cook through, and I'll show you what's next. We can come to a steaks. Well, I'll put them in the oven first. Okay, so I've turned the mushrooms. I've turned the potatoes a few times. So what I'm going to do now, just turn the heat down for a minute. I'm going to shove these in the oven. In a minute, just play me around. I'm just going to shove this into the oven. Okay. So remember to use the cloth, and like I said, keep our eye on it. We're going to give it about 20 minutes, but during that time we're just going to keep flipping them. All right, so has to be timer on. So our next job is to do our mushrooms. We're going to fry them off a bit. So I've got some button mushrooms here, but some of them are rather large. Now what I've done with these is I've actually wiped these down. Okay, don't wash mushrooms because they'll pick up the water. What you should do is just give them a wipe. Okay, so I'm just going to cut some of these up, and then what we're going to want, obviously, is to get a frying pan, and we're going to heat up some butter. So we don't want as much as we had before. All right, So I'm just going to have a generous chunk there. There we go. And whoop, that mushroom wanted to go back to the ground. So like I say, some of these are quite small anyway, so I'm going to leave them whole. Now, you could, one of the alternatives that you could have had with it to accompany this steak is tomatoes. Don't eat tomatoes, especially fresh chopped tomatoes. Right? But if you wanted to replace the mushrooms with fresh chopped tomatoes, you could do that instead. So that's my biggest ones done there. So I'm not going to bother chopping the rest up. So we're going to let melt that butter down, and then we're just going to fry off them mushrooms for a bit. Okay, and then we'll just want to put them to one side while we do the steaks. So, oh, I forgot to put the garlic into the potatoes, didn't I? So let me just whip them out a minute. So I'm chucking in my garlic cloves into there. Okay, so that's just to get a bit of flavour in. You don't have to use your garlic. Okay, you don't need to have garlic. But at the end of that, we're going to add some salt, some pepper and some parsley to them. But the garlic's just going to flavour it while we're at it. So that's starting to melt down. So at this point, I'm going to chuck in my mushrooms. Now we've got a lot of mushrooms here. I like mushrooms. Alright, I'm sure I'm bloody of it. Probably an excessive amount, but who cares? Okay. And we're just going to cook them off in that butter, and then like I say, what we'll need to do is just put them in something, keep them warm for when we do the steaks. And in the meantime, a beer. Gone a bit quiet upstairs. Probably just talking over the dinner. Right, not often we get a steak, but there you go, got us a couple of steaks. So while I wait for my mushrooms to cook, potatoes in the oven, I'll let you go off and you find your own beer. Right, getting a bit warm indoors, and the wife said to me I shouldn't wear my hat indoors. Alright, a proper gentleman, take his hat off when he's indoors. I'm going to take my hat off. So, I've moved the mushrooms onto the back burner so you can see what I'm doing here. What we're going to do now is we're going to start preparing our steaks. So like I said, we want some force meat. So there's my force meat. So let's get me steak. So, you want a nice thick steak for this. Unfortunately, it's a bit difficult boning things like that in lockdown. Right? Nice sharp knife. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a little slit inside our steak. Okay, just sort of creating a little pocket. Stand out that we've got a little bit of gristly bit here. All right, might have to forget that going that way. So we just create a little pocket in there, and then we take some of our force meat and we force it in it. Okay, so we're effectively stuffing our steak, our beef steak, with a bit of pork. All right, so shove it in there best you can. Now this is why you can't really have your steaks rare, because obviously we need to make sure that we fully cook the meat inside. Okay, so there's my sort of stuffed steak. All right, so I'm going to do that with the other one. Let me just wash my hands. I'm going to do that with the other one, and then we'll be ready once these mushrooms are cooked to start cooking off the steak. So potatoes are still going. We'll give them a little turn in a minute. That's it really for now. Okay, so I'll get the other steak done and then I'll show you what we do next. Okay, so I've just turned my potatoes and they're doing nicely, nice and crisping up and browning on the outside. My mushrooms are just about there, so what we're now going to add to the mushrooms is some seasoning. Where's my seasoning gone? Okay, so a bit of salt and pepper. Okay. And we're also going to chuck in a tablespoon of breadcrumbs. Okay. So I've got them measured out there already. Okay, in they go. So just give them a bit of a mix around. Get off of there. Okay, cook them for a little bit, and then actually what I might do with these is just actually push them to one side. Turn that so you can see it a little bit better. You turn it to one side, or put them to one side and cook the steak in the middle. So I might add a little bit of butter before we do that, because the mushrooms do tend to absorb it. Okay, so let me get a little bit more butter. So there's a lot of butter in this, but there you go, better than lard, isn't it? That would be the other thing to use. Right, so that's the butter done with. So the final thing we need to do is chop up some parsley. Now we're going to need parsley for both the potatoes and the steak. Okay, so I've got a good handful of parsley here, and we're just going to chop this up. Now for the steak you only want about half a teaspoonful, you don't want an awful lot, and you want that one chopped quite finely. For the potatoes, don't need to be quite so finely chopped, so I think we'll just do it all, chop it up fairly well. Alright, so really a few more minutes and I'm going to put the steak in there. Okay, so getting close to dinner, I'm getting hungry. Right, so push my mushrooms to one side, so let's put our steaks in. Okay, so in goes our stuffed steak. Now, like I said to you, you know, normally perhaps we'd have our steak rare, or certain medium rare, so it's, you know, a little bit sort of bloody still in the middle, if you like. But in this case, because we've stuffed it with pork, we really need to make sure it's all thoroughly cooked through. So that's gone in there, the parsley's chopped. Now here I've got 3/4 teaspoon of salt, this is going around the potatoes, and I've got about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, that's also going to go in potatoes. So like I said, some of that parsley will go in with potatoes, and some of that parsley will eventually go into that when the steaks are cooked. So that's it, that's my dinner almost done. Well, mine and the missus. Right, she's busy up cleaning the bath out. Her idea about cleaning the bath is if she fills it up with soapy water and gets in it, that'll clean it. Don't quite think the master or the missus upstairs would think the same thing, but you know, who knows, they're too busy with their champagne and their guests. So, well, really, not much else I can do really now. Just, we're going to cook that steak. Potatoes are almost there. I might turn the heat down in a minute. Actually, I might have a little look at potatoes. Right, shall we have a look at potatoes? Let's have a look. See if I can burn myself. Okay, let's see how they're doing. So, that comes with potatoes. Yep, they're crisping up nicely. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so let's give them a little bit of a toss. Yeah. Might have to turn the heat down on them because I don't think my steak's going to be ready quite in time. But they're looking good. Garlic's browning, so nice lot of flavour in there. Can't smell it. No sense to smell me. Right, in that goes. Turn that heat down a little bit. So, that's it really. Till them steaks are done, can't do much else. Just give you a little update. I've checked the temperature inside, it's still not really up temperature yet. There's also still a bit of blood leaking out. Like I say, if it weren't for the fact they're stuffed with pork, these are well overdone for what I'd like. Right, but we want to make sure we cooked it all the way through thoroughly to get to that force meat in the middle. Okay, my potatoes, I've just turned the heat off in the oven for now. Nice and crisp and brown. Looking good, so is my mushrooms. So, just a little bit longer with this steak and then we'll start serving up. Well, I'll show you what we do, find a little bit before we start serving it up. They're finally there. So what I'm going to do, I've got some plates there. Get me potatoes out of the oven. Aim them usually cloth so I don't burn my hand. Okay, so they're, like I said, ooh, that's hot, nicely browned. So what we're going to add into that is we're going to chuck in our pepper. We're going to chuck in that salt. Okay, quite a bit of salt. And then we're going to put in there a generous sort of pinch there of parsley. So give that all a little mix around. Okay, coat it all in the parsley and whatever. Now at this point you might want to remove your garlic. Although it might be quite nice to eat without garlic, to be honest. Okay. So the potatoes are just about ready to serve. It's the 7th tonight, 7th of November. But of course we've got people out there letting fireworks off. So they let them off early, they let them off late. Right, so our next little thing is what I'm going to do. I'm going to push my mushrooms round to one side, move my steaks over, and then I'm just going to add some parsley over my mushrooms. Give them a little mix in the parsley. Turn the heat off and time to serve up. So first off, let's get our steak, okay, on the plate. We want some mushrooms. Okay, this is mine. I like mushrooms. My wife ain't that bothered. Okay, and then, oops, a bit of garlic there. And then on goes some potatoes. Now, this is a very buttery thing. Okay, you can add a little bit of the butter sauce if you prefer. Okay, but there is your stuffed steak with mushrooms and roasted chateau potatoes. So because I can't really cut my steak one-handed, you're not going to get to see me taste this, but there we go. Tonight's dinner, courtesy of him upstairs.